Young ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you, or good morning. Once again, you are all very welcome here on your beloved platform, the platform for awakening consciousness. In international news, Iran has broken its silence and released statistics regarding the number of missiles they used and the percentage of their military capabilities deployed against Israel during the 12-day war. Let me tell you, the sheer numbers are truly frightening, and it's quite easy to understand precisely why Iran showed absolutely no fear whatsoever. Why then was Iran so incredibly confident? And why indeed was Iran in no particular rush to act at all? And why did Iran clearly announce that surrender was out of the question? They insisted on facing Israel directly. Yes, Iran is a power, but until now, it had not revealed itself to the world. Today, even the major world powers have taken note that from now on, Iran must be regarded as a formidable adversary, an equally fearsome opponent. So we have this notable Iranian general, whose specific name and full title I will provide to you in just a moment, who recently made a very significant public statement that has garnered considerable attention and discussion. This prominent general, in his official declaration, stated that regarding the recent 12-day conflict, it clearly and unequivocally highlighted Iran's significant and effective deterrence strategy, demonstrating its considerable power and influence in the region. First of all, it demonstrates to the world that Iran has a very strong deterrent and strike capability. So, according to his statements, Iran only used a minimal fraction of its military capabilities, just a tiny fraction of Iran's military power. That is what was used during the 12 days. And he explicitly states that this very minimal fraction, in fact, represents a mere 5% of the total ballistic missiles that the nation of Iran currently possesses, according to his assessment. So Iran only used 5% of its ballistic missiles. Yes, and yet, when you look at it, Iran sent a lot of missiles, right? Isn't it possible that they reached up to 800 missiles? And the saturation technique or method that Iran used meant the missiles were all falling at the same time. We saw that this is what overwhelmed the Iron Dome. That's why the other countries allied with Iran, with Israel, decided to come and help Israel. So, Iran says it was just 5%. That means Iran was ready to keep going no matter how long it took, no matter the duration. That's the first point. The second crucial point to consider is about Iran's overall military capabilities and its strategic potential. What percentage of its overall military capabilities did Iran use during the 12-day conflict? Despite everything we've seen, Iran says they used less than 30% of Iran's total military capabilities. What they used didn't even reach 30% of their military capabilities, let alone 50%. Meanwhile, Israel used 100% of its military capabilities. Israel even exhausted. It even went beyond 100%. That's actually what led Israel to ask for help. So, when we make a small comparison, it means there's really no comparison to be made. The two countries are on completely different levels. Israel has always relied on America and its allies. Iran, fully knowing that it had no real and substantial support as such, has always resolutely forged its own independent path. Iran's story is like that of an isolated orphan with neither father nor mother who has to fend for himself. And Israel's story is like that of the pampered baby of the family. When you compare the two in terms of success, in most cases the pampered babies fail. And the mistreated, isolated child in the family is always the one who succeeds. We wonder why that is. Because excessive suffering sharpens intelligence and forces a person to rise to the challenge of succeeding. And so, Iran found itself in such a situation. When you know you have no support, you are forced to spread your own wings and fly. But you will have to work hard. You will have to work hard. Iran has structured its army well. For years, Iran has been producing weapons to make its army self-sufficient and independent. Meanwhile, Israel keeps boasting. Israel continues to rely on its allies. That's why only when there's real trouble, Israel calls on its ally. So, let's dive deeper. Make sure you've shared the video conference in all the groups. Give it lots of likes. If you're new here, please subscribe. So, this statement suggests a substantial reserve of firepower that has not yet been deployed. In other words, this statement from the general proves that Iran still has a significant reserve of untapped firepower. Yes. So, this could have significant implications for how Iran's military strength is perceived. The emphasis is on the vastness of Iran's reserves. This point aims to reinforce the idea that the country is far from having exhausted its resources in the event of a prolonged conflict. That means Iran is ready. So these statements are interpreted as a clear message directed at all potential adversaries. And this statement highlights Iran's ability to sustain a long-term conflict and escalate its actions if necessary. So in other words, Iran is making this statement to prove to all its enemies that Iran is ready and that they shouldn't even think about messing with Iran. Trying to mess with Iran means you're playing with fire because they are prepared. They can sustain a conflict over the long term. They rely on no one except Almighty God and their own equipment. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that was the top story in the news. So please share it as much as possible. I'll be back with more information for you shortly, by the grace of the Almighty. This was the voice of your humble servant, the one and only Samurai.